If I had to summarize this past year, I would say very fun. I think I've learned a lot outside of class. I think I've met some incredible people, some lifelong friends. Um, and now that I've experienced what it is to be a college student, I am dropping out after this semester to work with Alex and Leila Hormozi at acquisition.com.
So here's the thing. Very few books are written by people who've actually done the work. Jay Yang's book, You Can Just Do Things, is the exception. Jay believes you don't need permission to create your own opportunities. Before he graduated high school, he'd built a social media following to hundreds of thousands of followers, built his personal business to generating tens of thousands of dollars every single month, interned at one of the biggest email newsletter companies, and landed himself a job working with Noah Kagan, founder of AppSumo, which generates over $80 million a year, as Noah's head of content, where he led social media campaigns, including the one that made Noah's book Million Dollar Weekend a New York Times bestseller. Now, at age 19, Jay's working with Alex and Leila Hormozi at acquisition.com. In his latest book, You Can Just Do Things, The Power of Permissionless Action, Jay shares the stories and strategies that helped him take bold action, build momentum, and create his own career path from scratch. I want to be more like Jay when I grow up, even though I'm almost like 20 years older than him. This will be one of the most powerful conversations you'll hear about how to build the life you want on your terms instead of waiting for permission. Let's get started. What is a permissionless approach itself?
A permissionless approach is about this idea that you don't need permission to do things. You don't need permission to start. You don't need permission to ask. And it's this idea that we have to uncondition ourselves from this idea that we need other people's approval or permission to do the things that we want in our lives and in our career.
You, in my mind, are like the poster child for this. Like, dude, as you know, like I've literally done workshops on like permissionless approaches to things. And you're like, you are the case example I always give. And like, I always tell people, I want to be more like you when I grow up, even though I'm like almost twice your age. Like I'm 36 right now. You're like what, 19?
Yeah, 19.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like, dude, you've already done so much and you had done so much before you even fucking graduated high school. So like my thing with books, like You Can Just Do Things
Oh, yeah.
is yeah, of course, 100%. Like I couldn't wait to fucking pick this book up. My thing though is like most books aren't written by people who have done the work and earned the right to write that book. Right. So many books are just like they're theoretical or and they're interesting. They've got really fun stories and all this other shit, but they're not really written by people who have done the fucking work. This book is that exception. Like you have done the work, right? So with this permissionless approach, how did you come up with the philosophy behind it?
I don't think it's necessarily that I came up with it. I think I've definitely taken inspiration from those who have come before me, which I talk about in the book, Reverse Engineering the Greats. Um, this idea has been percolating in my mind for forever. And honestly, I wrote the book just so I could stop thinking about it in my head all the time. Like it was driving me crazy because that's all I could think about. Is like people just need to realize that they can do things and that they don't need permission to do the things that they want. Um, I think I first heard of this idea of this permissionless concept from Jack Butcher, his permissionless apprentice course. I took that when I was just starting out. It was like $1, and it changed my life. It made me realize that you can the power of doing the work up front, right? Because when we reach out to people, the number one mistake I see people make is they have this sense of entitlement that, oh, just because I reached out, I deserve a response. They just have to respond. But that's putting the burden on the other person. It makes them have to figure out who are you and how can you help me? What skills do you have? That's a lot of burden to put on someone who, if you're reaching out to them, they're typically busy or, doing things. And so that approach of like doing the work up front instead of how can I help, or I'll work for free. It's I did the work already, and here's like showing them, here's how I can help you. And so that's where that first idea came about. I also was obsessed with that concept when I was listening to a podcast from Jeremy Mary, who runs a YouTube agency right now, but he had a podcast called Backstage Careers, where he would interview the people working behind the scenes with some of the top entrepreneurs and top creators we know, and just showcasing their stories of like, okay, how did you reach out, and how did you get the job, and how did you stand out within the job? That idea of like compressing the timeline by apprenticing or by working with these entrepreneurs really fascinated me. And then just by the fact that I've been applying these methods to my own career, it just like built further proof, further evidence that, oh my gosh, this actually works.
I love that. So same thing. Like I'd come across Jack Butcher's permissionless apprenticeship stuff, and just the whole idea of like you don't have to wait for somebody's permission to learn from them, right? Like if you want to learn investing from Warren Buffett, you don't have to actually try to officially apprentice under him. You can just read all of his writing. You can watch all the podcasts and shit he's done, all the Berkshire Hathaway stuff, and you can learn all of that without ever actually asking permission. But reversing that and taking a permissionless approach to teaching others what you already know or showcasing the expertise you already have, that's a thing very, very few people ever actually do, right? So, if we're talking about like cold outreach and shit, right? Most people, they just pitch. They're like, hey, if you hire me, I would love to do this. Or the thing I fucking hate is like, hey man, I did this thing. Is it okay if I send it over? Dude, just fucking send it. Like send it with your initial message. Like don't do this back and forth thing, right? And like because you are waiting for permission. And I understand it's like an old school like sort of sales tactic of like get that initial buy-in, get them to agree to something, and that it's but it's kind of sleazy and you're adding unnecessary friction. But beyond that, you're not actually showcasing your expertise, right? Most people only ever send a pitch. They don't send like a portfolio. They don't share, like, hey, this is what I've already done. You can make the decision as to whether or not I'm the person you're looking for. Right. And so like with the Noah Kagan thing, right? Walk me through, like for people listening who aren't familiar, walk us through how did you actually end up working for Noah Kagan before you even graduated high school?
Yeah, so actually, the story starts when I reached out to Jeremy from, because I listened to his podcast. His podcast inspired me to cold email Tyler Denk at Beehive, and I interned there. And so I DM'd him on Twitter, and I was like, hey, like I don't want anything, don't need anything. I just want to say I appreciate you. Your podcast inspired me to cold email Tyler. And I talk about that in the book. Is like reach out to the people that inspired you. Reach out to the people who like say you like someone's book. Send that note of appreciation, and that small act of kindness or act of appreciation can go super far, and it did. I started talking with Jeremy. At the time, he was Noah Kagan's head of YouTube, and he mentioned that Noah was looking for someone to grow his newsletter. And I was like, "Hey, I just worked at a newsletter company, and I've just been obsessed with newsletters." And so that idea is like, okay, uh, I think there's something here. And so I dropped everything, and for the next 50 hours, I spent time putting together a 19 slide pitch deck deconstructing all of Noah's emails and socials, um, figuring out what was he doing that was good, what was bad, what could he be doing better, what was his competition doing, what would it look like if I worked with him. And then I attached 9 ready to be published pieces of content to that slide deck. All he had to do was click send. And I said, hey, Noah, if you love this, like let's work together. If not, no harm, no foul. And by doing that up front, it showed Noah that number one, I had it showed him that I could think in that way, and it showed also that I have had done the result, I've done the work, because I also talked about my work with Beehive.
That and like, even if you hadn't necessarily, so the Beehive is definitely some social proof and shit, right? But even if you hadn't, just purely saying, hey, here is my entire strategy that I think would really work for you all. Here it is. I'm not trying to like gatekeep, but I'm not trying to say you will get this if you hire me. Here it is, along with some like turnkey shit you can go ahead and use on your own. And if it works, great. He can immediately tell how good you are right out the gate. There's no debate, right? There's no like mental like, well, is this kid like, okay, well, do we want to like set up a phone call? Do we want like maybe this, maybe like they can just know right out the fucking gate if you're the person for them or not. And that is something that so few people think about. So many people think that like they have this super secret methodology or this like whatever that they can't share with people, right? And it's like I've heard back in the money Twitter days, J.K. Molina would talk about, give away the recipe because people will hire you to cook for them, right? And it's just this whole idea of like, if you demonstrate your expertise freely for everybody to see, that is how you attract these opportunities. That is how you get this buy-in, right? But I think so many people are too precious about their ideas that they don't want them to be stolen, or they feel like people, you know, have to pay them for every little thing. It's like that is completely backward because then nobody knows how fucking good you are.
Yeah, it's that idea that people don't pay for information, they pay for implementation. And so I like to tell people, if you want to work for your favorite entrepreneur or your favorite company, you have to show them two things. You have to show them that number one, you want the job, and number two, that you can do the job. And the best way to do that is to do the work up front, to show your thinking, to give away the recipe, as you said.
Well, and like, so when we talk about like college and shit, right? So like I went to college for 12 plus years, got the doctorate, did all that. Because in my original line of work, that actually was required to like practice therapy. So like you have to do that to have a license and shit. But like so many people graduate without the competency that is supposed to come with a diploma. Because so many people think that they need the piece of paper because that gives them permission to go out and do the thing. And unless you are in like you're going for like a very specific industry that actually does require that, most of the time you can self-educate. And you're honestly better off most of the time, especially in business, taking 2 to 3 to 5 years and just running experiments, doing shit, stacking skills rather than chasing a degree. But I'm curious about your thoughts because you've kind of like you've started college. What are your thoughts now after being in college for what, like a year?
Yeah, almost a year now. I know we talked about it when I visited you down in Austin, and I was debating, like, hey, is college the right move? I ended up deciding to go for two reasons. Number one, you can't knock it if you don't try it. I was hearing arguments on both sides. So college is useless. So college, you need to go to college. And I think if you ask enough people, all the advice cancels out to zero. And then it just ends up being your decision at the end of the day. So I wanted to try it and say, you know what, if it doesn't work out, if I don't like it, chalk it up to the game. It was an experiment, and now you do your own thing. Versus not going ever and kind of regretting, like, I don't know what it means to be a college student. I don't even know what that is. And so I ended up deciding to go. And if I had to summarize this past year, I would say very fun. I think I've learned a lot outside of class. I think I've met some incredible people, some lifelong friends. Um, and now that I've experienced what it is to be a college student, I am dropping out after this semester to work with Alex and Leila Hormozi at acquisition.com.
Dude, I am so legitimately fucking excited for you and everything you've already done, but also like just how limitless what is in front of you. Like every single time, like literally every single time I see you like share a win or like we talk about some shit, I'm like, I'm just so fucking happy for you, dude. Cause like you are the embodiment of this permissionless approach and of what can happen if you if you just do things. Like if you just quit waiting for permission, you do the fucking thing, right? But the thing with college is I mean, not that my opinion fucking matters, but I do think that what you did was right for you in that regret minimization, right? Like you want to make sure that you got the experience, whatever. For me, the biggest skills I got from college, I didn't get from a college classroom. So
Hmm.
like, um, so undergrad, I actually had like a fairly low GPA once I graduated. I actually graduated with two D's, and the only reason I did, you weren't supposed to be able to graduate with two D's with anything lower than a C, but they were like chemistry and math. I just like I legitimately just never went to fucking class, and I ended up getting D's. But but there's a technicality, so I was actually able to graduate even though I got below the minimum. Um, and then when I got to my master's program and I was going into therapy, I remember sitting there, um, and I was getting into the clinical program, which is super competitive. They only let in like five or so people at a time. And I'm sitting here in this like little waiting room with all these other students. And all like everyone else had like super, super high GPAs, like straight A's. They had been working different fancy sounding jobs for years. They were super professional. They were older, whatever. And I'm like, I'm straight up not going to get in this program. And the way it worked was you had two interviews. Each of them were a half hour. And each of mine, the first 25 minutes, we just were just bullshitting. Like we were talking about like just the most random things. And then at the very end, the last 5 minutes, they're like, so why do you want to be in this program? So I left and I was like, these motherfuckers don't want me because they didn't actually interview me. Like we just hung out. Clearly they just were killing time. And then the next day, I got a call. They're like, hey, you got in the program. I'm like, that's awesome, but fucking how? They were like, everybody in that room was clearly smart enough to get into the program. We wanted to see if you could hold a conversation with somebody.
Hmm.
Like, can you build rapport? Can you create a sense of psychological safety when you're talking to somebody? And I was like, well, motherfucker, you could have asked me that. Like, I spent 4 years running my fraternity. All I did was hang out with people and build rapport and like recruit. Like people skills, like that's all I did. I skipped classes to go do fraternity shit. And it's like, that is something I could have only gotten in college, right? Is that socialization aspect, that building rapport kind of thing. Because again, I'm older. Nowadays, I think it is easier for you to have to cultivate similar environments without necessarily having to go to college, especially in places like Austin where I'm at, or some other places that have more like creator entrepreneurial like hubs where so many people are kind of like that. Um, so for you now that you're leaving college, how do you plan to continue to have that? Because you talk about being a super connector, right? How do you plan to continue to have that level of social engagement now that you're off campus?
That is an incredible question. I definitely think my social aspect will take a hit as I'm in Vegas, and I think that's intentional, especially for this season of my life. I foresee these next few months to be a deep season of sprint, uh, in specifically the work category. But at the same time, I think what I am trying to do is bring online relationships into IRL. And so I have a lot of friends who are all over the place. And just whenever they fly into Vegas or whenever they're visiting Chicago, it's like being intentional about, hey, can we grab dinner? Hey, let's hang out. Let's catch up. Um, and at the same time, I think it's less trying to establish new relationships at this point and more trying to strengthen current relationships. I've found I am absolutely terrible at keeping up with old friends. And so now that I'm going to be halfway across the country, I think it's more about reminding myself, hey, like you got to check in, because relationships do tend to wither if you don't speak for over 6 months.
I love that intentionality of I am going to be the one who texts somebody or reaches out or checks in on them. And being in places like Vegas, similar to Austin, a lot of people come through there. So a lot of people live there, but even people who don't live there tend to come through there for conferences, for travel, for all these other things, right? So it gives you access in person to people you ordinarily, it would be much more cumbersome to be able to hang out with, right? In addition to like obviously going to conferences and shit that are like more like, you know, business creator focused. Um, One thing that I am really curious like about how you think about it. So you are young, you're not even 20. You have already accomplished so much and you have so much more to accomplish. And you've already like you dude, you've run a fuck ton of experiments and like some things have worked out, some things have just been learning opportunities. And like the current iteration of all the things you're doing right now will look completely different 6 months from now and 6 years from now, right? And everybody says, you know, your 20s are for grinding and for doing this and learning and doing everything else. How do you reconcile ambition and achievement with acceptance and enjoyment? Because it's really easy to grind so hard a decade goes by and you look back and you're like, fuck, I never lived.
For me, it's never felt like a grind because it's what I've wanted to do. And so a lot of people will talk about either you grind in your 20s or you live it up in your 20s. Either way, there has to be a trade off. But for me, I've always just loved the work that I've done so much that doing the work was the joy. And I know that sounds cliche, but now that I'm in college and I'm not, physically near my parents, we have a family group chat. And I swear I text them like 5 to 7 times a day, just like little things. Oh my gosh, this happened. Oh my God, this, like just this morning, the head coach of the University of Texas uh, shared one of my posts and followed me back. And I just thought that was super cool. And I texted him that. I just think I definitely sway more towards the grind and then the ambition part, but I wouldn't want to have it any other way. And maybe that's just how I'm wired. Um, but I think everyone has a different definition of fun and enjoyment. And I think if you only think of fun as partying and drinking, that's like saying food is bland if you don't have hot sauce on it. Like everyone enjoys their food in a different way. And so my enjoyment is working. My enjoyment is falling down curiosity rabbit holes on the internet. It's reading books. It's writing books. It's doing podcasts like these and having incredible conversations with curious people.
So is it that you have learned to love hard work, or is it that you have gravitated toward work you naturally love doing?
I think a little bit of both. Sometimes I'd be like, hey, I'd rather go out and do something instead of in my room and type away at the computer. But I think in the macro, the work has pulled me toward it. It's not something. It's something I can't not do. Um, and so yeah, it's not fun all the time, but I think in the big picture, would I rather be laying on the beach somewhere or would I rather be working? Big picture, I think I'd get bored on the beach, and so I'd rather be leveling up in the video game of my career.
So there's this concept called eudaimonia. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. Um, so eudaimonia, you can kind of think about it like self-actualization or fulfillment. Um, so So you've probably heard of like the hedonic treadmill. Hedonia means pleasure seeking. So like in the clinical psychology world, anhedonia, or if somebody is anhedonic, it's actually one of the symptoms of depression. It just means you don't enjoy things you used to enjoy, a lack of pleasure, anhedonia.
Hmm.
Eudaimonia is kind of like a level higher than hedonia, in that hedonia is something that you do because it feels good in the moment. It is hedonic, right? Hedonism. Eudaimonia is something that it doesn't necessarily always feel good in the moment, but you still believe it is worthwhile over the long term. So an example I always gravitate toward is Justin Wren. He's a former MMA fighter, philanthropist, a bunch of other things. His nickname was the Big Pygmy because he's just giant ass white dude. But he's very passionate about going to like the Congo and helping the pygmy population get access to like clean drinking water. And I guess there's some like modern day slavery practices he helps them like free themselves from, all that kind of shit. He's got a foundation, everything. The issue is apparently even though you get like the malaria vaccine, you can still get malaria. So yeah. So he's gotten malaria like over 3 times. Last time I checked, it was 3+ times. He even gave a TED talk at one point, like he had to like shorten the length because he actively was recovering from malaria during his fucking TED talk. But the whole thing was like, if you were to ask Justin on a day he has malaria, and like malaria is like super painful. If you say, "Hey Justin, do you feel good today? Are you happy?" He would be like, "No, I'm in tons of pain. I have fucking malaria." But if you said, "Hey Justin, is this worth it? Is going and helping these people, even though you feel like complete shit today, is this mission still worthwhile?" And he would say yes every day. And I think
Mm.
so many people get caught up in chasing hedonic stuff, hedonia, pleasure seeking, things that feel good today superficially, that they sacrifice more eudaimonic, eudaimonia type activities. Because it isn't like, does this feel good today? It's, is this worth it in the long run? Do I have conviction that this sacrifice is worthwhile, that this work ethic, that this obsession I have, is it worthwhile over the long term? Because one of the things I see so many people that causes so many people to give up is after the 2 to 3 week shiny objects, period ends, they're like, fuck, this is boring, or oh fuck, this is hard, or oh, I'm not getting the traction I thought I was supposed to. So that they're chasing that superficial aspect, that day-to-day pleasure, and they don't ever think about one, what is actually worth doing long term, but then they never actually do work that is worth it long term. They never consider eudaimonia. What are your thoughts on
Mm.
that? Because, like, dude, like, you're at the age where, like, you are the outlier of outliers as far as like doing long term shit and building, laying brick by brick of this empire you're building. Most people at your age, myself included, when I was 18, 19 through mid 20s, you might have some long term goals, but it is much more short term focused day to day.
I think you absolutely nailed it. Um, the two people I had in mind that did work that probably didn't feel very good in the moment, but ultimately was worth it in the end. I talk about in the book Arnold Schwarzenegger. He did two-a-days, two workouts every single day, one in the morning, one at night, every single day for over 2 decades. When I can guarantee you, while he was on that 11th rep of the third set, he probably wasn't feeling very happy or very fulfilled, or wasn't feeling super a lot of pleasure. But if you extend that timeline, if you lengthen that timeline, uh, receiving the awards and feeling good about himself and having his body as proof of the work that he put in, I can guarantee he felt a ton of fulfillment. Same thing with Kobe Bryant. When you wake up at 4 a.m. to lift and shoot shots, I don't think that's something that many people will find joy in. But when you hit the game winning shot, when you win your fifth championship, when you're known as the greatest of all time, I think that gives you a lot of fulfillment. So it's the question you have to ask yourself is, would I rather embrace the suffering or the hard now for the results in the future, or would I rather embrace the short term pleasures now and then have to deal with the consequences in the future? And so that's the question I always ask myself when I make decisions is like, will this help me get me closer to my North Star or not?
That um, one of the other things I think about is a quote that Jerry Seinfeld shared on the Howard Stern show, and it was something to the effect of, "Your blessing in life is when you find the torture you're comfortable with." because in the interview, Howard Stern is talking about how, he's talking to Jerry about his method, and like how Jerry's like always on. He's always thinking about a joke. He's like Jerry's like, I'm never fully present in anywhere in my life. I am never fully present because there's always something going on in the back of my brain of like, how can I turn this into a joke, into a bit, something. And he was like, I'm never present. I'm never fully present with my wife, my kids. I'm not even fully present right here with you right now. And Howard Stern was like, that sounds like torture. And Jerry's like, it is, but it's my torture. And I think about that daily ever since I heard it, because it's like, for me, the best people, the people who are the best at what they do and actually enjoy their fucking life, have found or developed an obsession, a torture that they love. And the fact that they can, quote unquote, more effectively suffer through that, because they find both sometimes day-to-day enjoyment out of it, but long-term fulfillment from it. It's like you said, it's, I can't not do this. That, I think, is the single differentiator for people who go on and build legacies and achieve self-actualization, whatever you want to call it, because they have found the thing that they can't not do, and they have devoted themselves to doing that.
Yeah, in the book I talk about, I mean, there's an entire chapter on obsession, about this idea that, interested, as Tim Grover would say, interested people watch, obsessed people change the world. And so in the book I talk about three tests or methods you can use to identify your obsession, because it's hard, it's difficult. The first test is the P test. What do you find yourself doing and that you get so engaged in that you lose track of time, that you forget to drink water, you forget to pee, you forget to eat food? Um, and I've definitely found myself, deep in writing a YouTube script and forgetting to like eat lunch. I'm like, oh shoot, I thought it was just 10 a.m. It's 3 o'clock. Um, the second test would be the midnight test. What do you find yourself doing where you stay up past midnight, not because there's a deadline or because someone told you to, but because you just can't stop working? And the third test is the boredom test. What do you find so engaging that other people find boring? The example I like to use is every week I write a weekly newsletter, The Spark, comes out every Sunday. And my twin brother, he does not understand it at all. He's like, why would you give yourself a weekly homework assignment? That makes no sense. But to me, it doesn't feel like an assignment. It feels like joy. I get to I get to express my learnings, articulate my thoughts, discover new things, and I get to connect with people that share the same interests. And so if you can go through those three tests, and maybe you won't find it right away, but I think it's important to reflect on, hey, what actually do I find interesting? Because what you'll find is when you find something interesting, you naturally want to do it more. And when you naturally want to do it more, you get better at it. And when you get better at it, you start to like it a little bit more. And it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, this loop, that keeps going on.
What do you think holds so many people back from finding or creating that thing?
I would say two things. Number one, it would be not experimenting enough. This is not the work that I'm doing now is not the first thing I've started. I started a YouTube music promotion channel. I started several Instagram theme pages. I even tried to start a clothing brand. Each of those were experiments, and ultimately I stopped doing them because I didn't enjoy them. But they taught me, each one of them taught an important lesson that led me to the work that I'm doing now. And so I think not enough people are willing to embrace that failure to identify what they enjoy. And then I'd say the second thing is fear of what other people will think, or fear of judgment. Liking writing at age 19 is not really a popular hobby. It's not something like most people are proud of. It's kind of weird. I mean, I collect questions, I collect sentences. That's very weird. And so I think what holds people back is maybe they do have an inkling of what they like, but they're kind of afraid to lean into it because it's not popular. It's not cool.
So going back to the first piece, then, how do you decide when to persevere versus when to pivot? Because you've run multiple experiments in like sort of like sub businesses. How do you decide when to stick with it and when to quit?
That's a great question. Um, to me, it's does this align with the ultimate North Star goal? And I think for the projects that I started and ended up quitting, I realized that they didn't align with where I wanted to go. For the music promotion channel, I realized I actually wasn't that passionate about music. And so I realized I wasn't going to be able to do this for the long term. And so I think actually, instead of, I didn't quit that, I think I pivoted into the next venture. I think the only true failure is quitting everything and stopping everything and giving up on your North Star dream. Otherwise, I don't actually think it's quitting. I think it's pivoting. Everything is a series of pivots unless you stop doing things entirely.
Another thing that Jack Butcher is kind of known for is his sort of graphic about an inflection point, right? Of like this is pointless. So it's like these like basically it's like a bar chart or whatever. So there's like nothing, 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 and then you say this is pointless, and then right after that point you hit that inflection moment, and all of a sudden you're getting all these results. The issue with that, because that is effectively communicating the importance of persevering through the early stages when it seems like you're getting no traction, when nobody's watching, nobody's buying, nothing is working, because you're so early, you're not getting any real feedback to even fucking know what's working, what isn't. The issue with that, though, is when you are pre inflection, how do you know if you are actually going in the direction of an inflection point, or the thing you're working on never had potential to begin with? Because, like, both this book, You Can Just Do Things, and, like, I know Anne Laura LeCompte just came out with Tiny Experiments. So, like, in my mind, these are complementary books in that it's about, like, you can explore, you can experiment, you can just do the thing and see what happens. You effectively have nothing to lose by just trying the thing out, because regret is stronger than anything else. It is you can better handle a failure than regretting not even trying, right? But the issue is so many people, they try things, but they don't either have like their own internal success metrics to know how long do I persevere with this before I pivot it, versus how long do I just keep, shots on goal sort of a deal? How do I know when to stop or when to continue? Because I am pre inflection point. How do I know what is actually moving me toward the inflection point?
The example I have in my head is of Mr. Beast. He put out 1,000 videos before he ever really achieved any sort of external metric success. So I think to your point, you have to bring that inward. You have to find an internal metric that you can get excited about, because yeah, you'll never know if things are actually if that's actually the right path, or if it'll actually work out. No one can predict the future, and anyone telling you that they can predict the future is either lying to you, or trying to sell you something. And so what I would suggest is thinking about, instead of, hey, you know what, I've put out 1,000 videos and none of them have broken 1,000 views, I'm a failure, I should quit. It's like, did I get better within each upload? Is my 1,000th video better than my first video? Yes. And like, and understanding that those internal games you play, that's how you determine if, like, let's say you're not getting better between 1 and 1,000, and you still feel discouraged, like, chances are you have to do something different. But if video one and video 1,000 is infinitely better than video one, I think then it's just about, okay, let's stay in the game and let's map this out. If I keep improving, eventually something will happen. But if you're not improving and you're still discouraged, either you have to change your action or you have to change your expectation.
I like that. And that coupled with the North Star thing, right? So, I do a lot of values work. So all I'm a huge fan of how do you build a life and business aligned with your core value or values if you have a couple. I'm a fan of a core value though. And for me, every goal, idea, or opportunity has the potential to get you one step closer to or one step further away from a life aligned with your core value, with your North Star, in your words, right? I think that right out the gate is sort of like the thing you need to figure out, right? Obviously, try to figure out your North Star, right? But it's okay if it's kind of vague as long as you can see the direction you need to be going, right? After that, once you have that general, thing on the horizon, then it's like, okay, of all the ideas, all the shiny objects, all the experiments, all the potential lives I daydream about potentially living and making a reality one day, which of these actually move me closer to that? Because I think, especially not even when you're young, like when you are new to entrepreneurship, I'll put it that way. There is so much advice out there, and there are so many bros hawking bullshit about here's how to make your first $1,000 or 10K or this or like there's so much from people who they make money selling courses trying to help other people make money, but they themselves haven't ever done fuck all, right? It's like, dude, if you put out a course and like, hey, here's how to be a ghostwriter, that is completely different because you made fucking bank being a ghostwriter. Like, what the fuck you're doing, right? Versus if I was like, well, I Googled it, I talked to Claude about how to run a ghostwriting agency and create a course on it. Well, here's how, like, it would be complete bullshit, right? Because I'm not a ghostwriter. But like, it's this idea of people don't have a filtering mechanism to prioritize and clarify what ideas are worth pursuing. Because if you don't have conviction in what you're doing, it is going to be incredibly hard for you to persevere through the early days pre inflection point. Because if you are only chasing external metrics, accolades, whatever, when those don't come, and they typically don't come early on, you have no drive to continue doing it. You have no belief that it is worth doing. You're just chasing low hanging fruit that you think is guaranteed, that you heard some fucking Twitter bro tell you it's an easy 10K in 6 weeks with this, $10,000 course I sell. Like it's some shit like that, right? How do you, of somebody who is ambitious and already has a ton of achievements, how do you filter ideas, opportunities, goals as somebody who is probably drowning in them?
So I'll chunk that question down to, like, let's say you're a beginner and there's all these experts and gurus preaching and telling you the best way to do things. I think level one is like, do they have the business or are they living the life that you want? If they're not, then you can eliminate most of what they say. Level two would be, not only are they living the life you want or do they have the business you want, have they created other success stories just like theirs? Because anyone can do something once, but like as we know, being a player and then becoming a coach is two different games, and oftentimes a lot of players aren't great coaches. And so just because someone did something doesn't necessarily mean they'll be a great teacher or course mentor or anything like that. In terms of filtering opportunities right now, I like to think of this in four steps. Um, and I'll just go through all four of them. We kind of touch upon a few of them. But step one is, what do I want? What is my North Star? What do I want out of my life, my career, my business? Like, do I want to work indoors? Do I want to work outdoors? Do I want to work at my desk? Do I want to be moving? Do I want to work with many people? Do I want to work by myself? Do I want to work on my laptop? Do I want to work with my hands? Like, all these questions that I think more people should reflect on. And it's insane to me that people spend more time planning their weekends than they do planning their careers, when your career plays a disproportionate amount of impact on your life. So why would you not spend a disproportionate amount of time reflecting on that and being intentional about what you want and don't want? So that's step number one. Step number two is, okay, now that you have a general sense of what you want, What do you need to learn in order to get there? What are the skills? What are the beliefs? What are the character traits you need to adopt in order to become the person deserving of achieving your North Star? Step number three would be, now that you know your North Star, now that you know what you need to learn, who do you need to connect with in order to learn those skills in order to get what you want? And so, for my example, if I know that I want to be this author, entrepreneur type person, I knew that I needed to learn the skills of writing. I needed to learn how to build a business. Needed to learn all the micro skills that go into those things. And so I was like, okay, who are people who are living the life that I want to live, or have the business that I want to have, or have the skills, traits, or character skills, beliefs, or character traits that I want to adopt? And so Noah Kagan was one of them. That Tyler Denk was one of them. Alex Hormozi, Leila Hormozi. Those are people who have played a essential role at consuming their content. And so I want to get as close to them as possible so that I can understand, actually, maybe is this the life that I want? Maybe I don't want their life. And so you can, as the goal is to get as close as you can, so you can take a peer into their life to see if that's what you want. And then step four would be, how do I make this a no-brainer? How do I reach out to them in a way that reduces the friction? How do I maybe do the work up front? How do I maybe send a cold or a public DM instead of a cold DM? How do I showcase my thinking instead of telling them? And so if you can do those four things, I believe you can have a pretty successful career at a young age. You can compress your timeline for accomplishment simply by knowing what you want, knowing what it takes to get there, knowing who you need to connect with, and knowing how you can make it a no-brainer for those people.
I love that. So then an added layer, because some people would be like, okay, Jay, this sounds all well and good in theory. You did it, but you were in high school and now you're 19. I am middle aged with a family, a mortgage, this, that, whatever. How is somebody like that supposed to apply this approach?
I think it's the exact same thing. It's realizing that maybe you aren't living the life that you've wanted, and maybe it's about reflecting, okay, what do I actually want? Not what I grew up and what my parents told me to want, not what my teachers wanted, not what society told me to want. What do I want right now? And then it's about taking tiny action, just like in Atomic Habits, taking baby steps towards what you actually want. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you can make tiny decisions, maybe instead of watching Netflix, instead of watching Netflix with your family, you spend that time working. Or maybe it's, instead of getting bogged down by the kids, waking you up for breakfast, it's like, can you wake up 2 hours early, knock out some deep work before that happens? Obviously, I'm not 35 with kids. I don't exactly know what that situation would be like. Um, but I think far too many people underestimate what they can accomplish with tiny actions compounded over time.
I agree. And I think that a big piece to that is acknowledging your limitations and then finding ways to thrive within those limitations, right? Like what additional constraints can you apply that can progressively help you kind of escape your current situation and move closer to your ideal one, right? So let's say you're stuck in that, and this isn't just necessarily like a 9 to 5 person who hates their fucking job, but they have so much job security they feel like they can't leave. It can also be like an entrepreneur who's built up like golden handcuffs situation, right? I've seen plenty of entrepreneurs who on paper are very successful, but actually are miserable in real life, right? Um, or like creators like YouTubers who have built huge audiences in a specific niche, but they're like, I've said everything I can possibly say at this point. All I'm doing is just redoing the greatest hits, and I fucking hate it, right? I think fine. So let's say you want to be an author, you want to write a book. Okay, you don't necessarily have to, and you read On Writing by Stephen King, and he's like, oh, write 2,000 words a day, and then 3 months you'll have whatever. Maybe you can't actually do that. Maybe you physically just you can't. You don't have enough time to write 2,000 words a day. You can't write for 2 3 hours. Okay, can you write literally a single fucking paragraph every day? right? Like, the Jerry Seinfeld thing of like, you just, don't break the chain, right? Like every day, just make sure like you cross out, hey, I did my thing today. I upheld my commitment to myself today. I did the thing today. And then over time, eventually, that is how you make that progress. That is how you achieve the thing, right? Can you write a page a day? Can you write 100 words a day? Whatever that is, right? Um, again, back to fraternity. So like one of the things we had to do in my fraternity was you had to learn the Greek alphabet, which is pretty simple. But all the time, pledges would be like, I don't have enough time to learn the Greek alphabet. And my response every time was like, how long does it take you to take a shit? More or less than 30 seconds. Okay, you have 30 seconds at least once a day that you could be fucking studying the Greek alphabet. Like, it's really crude, but it's like, you honestly, Ryan Holiday talks about alive time versus dead time. You have much more time within your day than you probably recognize. How can you maybe just reallocate a little bit of that for yourself that progressively moves you closer to this life you actually want to achieve? Hey, real quick, if you want even more psychological insights to transform your business, your life, and yourself, check out the Creator Alchemy newsletter. New issues go out regularly and it's completely free to join. Go to creatoralchemy.com now, and as a thank you for subscribing, you'll unlock the Psychology of Success Masterclass, which is designed to help you build the foundations you need to succeed in life and business. It's based on strategies and insights I've developed over the years that have already helped countless creators all over the world do just that. So I'd love to send it to you too. Just go to creatoralchemy.com to get the newsletter and unlock the first lesson. All right, now back to the show. Another thing you've kind of touched on is societal and cultural pressures. Okay. Obviously, I am mostly white, so this has not been my personal lived experience, but something I consistently hear from a lot of my friends who are either, first generation or, maybe even second, especially from Asian households, is growing up, I was told you are allowed to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, or disappointment. So, so like for a lot of my friends who are from that kind of background, they're like, so when I wanted to be a creator, an entrepreneur, whatever, my family didn't know how to deal with that because it wasn't in their script of a career path I could have, because that doesn't have job security. It may not have the prestige that culturally people easily understand. How has that, or has it, played out for you in your life or other people you know?
I have to say, I have the most supportive and caring parents that anyone could ever ask for. I know everyone says that, but it's true for me. And so my parents definitely had expectations, like do well in school, obviously. Why would you not? And they had high expectations for me. I don't think they've ever had this idea like you have to do this, which I'm very grateful for. But I do understand it. I have a lot of Asian friends, and there's definitely that expectation that you just mentioned. If you want to do something different, I the method I like to tell people is don't tell your parents why you should be doing something different, like why you should be an entrepreneur. Show them evidence. And I think a lot of people try and convince their parents before they ever take a single piece of action. And it's like, if I was your parents, I would not want you to be an entrepreneur. You haven't proven to me, you haven't shown anything to me. And so, um, a lot of people have been asking me, how do your parents feel that you're dropping out of college to work at acquisition.com? And my answer to that is, obviously they want me to stay in school. It's a set career, traditional safe career path. But this isn't the first conversation we've had about something like this. You know, Straight out of high school, I had like three full-time job offers that I was seriously considering. And so I had these deep conversations with my parents about, hey, like, what would it look like if I didn't go to college? And so it's that idea that like small stacks of evidence eventually will change their mind. And even if it doesn't, you've still done the work, like, you know? And so the greatest response to any hate or any doubt is is, when I played basketball, the greatest response is you point up to the scoreboard and scoreboard, right? You're living the life, you have the business that you want. And if you don't, stop trying to spend your time telling people why they're wrong or disproving them. Just do the work and start the business and be an entrepreneur, be a creator first. And I think by showing them that, because all your parents really want is your safety and your security. They don't hate you, they're not against you, but in their minds, it'll be more secure and safe for you to take the traditional path. And so if you want a non traditional path, you have to do the work that shows them why the non traditional path is the right move for you.
So basically, you're saying most people are waiting for their parents' permission to take a non traditional path. But the better solution most of the time is to take a permissionless approach, get that evidence, and be like, hey, this is what I am doing. Here is evidence that supports the fact that I can be successful at it. Because fundamentally, I know what you want is for me to be happy, to have safety, security, financial, whatever. This is providing that. And in a way that I don't absolutely hate what I do 8 to 10 hours a day.
100%.
Because I'm always curious with that. Because like my parents, so I grew up on like public housing, food stamps. Like I grew up super, super poor. Like neither of my parents worked after like elementary school for me because for both physical and medical reasons, they both became disabled. Um, so like I was never a latchkey kid. My parents were always home. Like they're divorced, so like they live separately, but like mom and dad were always at home. I never had to think about that. And so like my mom's got like a 2-year degree. My dad says he barely graduated high school because he had like a 30 extra days of detention left and he wasn't sure they were going to like let him graduate because he just would fight all the time and shit. But like with a 4-year degree, I was the most traditionally educated person in my family, let alone master's and doctorate and everything else. But growing up, my dad, he would always tell me, he's like, look, son, don't use your body, use your brain. Like that is how you will sort of escape this whole kind of thing. Because like my dad, he used his body for a lot. And then one day when his body got super fucked up, he was like, I can't work anymore. So my parents and like from an early age, like I was a weird kid. Like my mom likes to tell people all the time that like I kept a dictionary in the bathroom. So like when I was taking a shit, I would just be reading fucking words and things, like just learning random definitions. And like to this day, and I took Latin in high school. So like to this day, I love like etymology and shit of words. It's a really weird niche interest I have, but I was always trying to learn. And my parents weren't overly educated, but they were incredibly supportive. They were like, whatever you need to learn more, to study more, cool, great. We can't necessarily provide you financially, but emotionally, morally, whatever, we will support you in any way that we can. So I never had that pressure of, hey, you need to do this. Hey, you need to go to this college. You need to have this major. Cause like my parents like straight up didn't fucking understand any of it. Like they had no conceptualization really of like a 4-year degree of how to navigate college and shit. I never experienced that pressure. But then like as I got older and I met almost everybody else, I was like, oh shit, like other people grow up with like some real pressure to like conform and like do this specific thing. It's like, well, fuck. It was like a blessing for me that my parents were like, as long as you're happy, we don't care what you do. Like I never had that pressure, but that pressure seems so prevalent for so many other people. And I deeply believe that that contributes heavily to why so many people don't experiment and explore non-traditional paths because they have their own insecurities, but then they also have family pressure, cultural pressure, everything else. And that's really, really hard, I think, for people to navigate, which is why I was really curious about your perspective, both currently to young people, but also how older people can maybe filter your message and apply it to their own life.
Alex has this idea of, his dad wanted him to get his MBA and higher degree, and Alex wanted to start his business. And he was so afraid of his dad's opinion that he drove from, I believe, I forgot where it was, somewhere in the Midwest, all the way to California, and he didn't tell his dad until he was in California, several states away. He was that afraid of his dad's opinion. But he said, ultimately, I had to make a decision. Either my dreams die and my dad's lives, or my dad's dreams for me dies and mine lives. And you just have to make that decision. It's hard, and it's not easy, but that's ultimately the decision you have to make.
I really like that. Yeah, because I think a lot of people live the life they think they're supposed to rather than living the life they actually know is right for them. Like, and you talked about earlier, like, what do you want? Dude, I have literally spent 6+ months with like coaching clients, asking them that one question every single week. Okay, but what do you want? Because it's like either people legitimately don't know what they want, or more often than not, they're afraid to admit what they want. Because by admitting what you want, you're also admitting what you currently have isn't what you want, and you have to make a change. And people are terrified of uncertainty. So, like, what do you want? A layer deeper than that is, what are you afraid to want? What are you afraid to admit you want?
A lot of people, growing up, that's that idea. Don't be a try hard, and it's because people are afraid to admit what they want, and they're also afraid to fully go after it. They're afraid to commit. And there's this mantra that I have right now: no half measures. If you're gonna do something, go all in. And it's scary because when you go all in and you fail, or you don't get what you want, it's like you have to own up. It's like, yeah, I didn't do good enough. And maybe people make fun of you because you tried so hard and you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. But wouldn't you rather have tried and not gotten what you wanted than have never tried at all? And so the mental model that I have in my mind is like, which path makes for the better story? Would I rather sit here on my ass and do nothing? Or would I rather go out on an adventure, try, fail, maybe come back, but now with earned wisdom and experience that I can talk about or that I can then apply to the next adventure?
I really like that because I will also use that sort of retroactively or in the moment sometimes of like, how can I turn this into a story? Or, there have been times where like I've, had, you know, been in a real, not dark place, but like really like a place of struggle in my life or my business, especially, early on in things. And even sometimes, random shit just kind of happens. And I think about the reframe that always helps me get out is one day this will be a chapter or a section in my autobiography. What can I take from this in this moment that will inspire somebody in the future? Because and it's like this whole idea, content creators will say like everything is content, right? And like writers are awful about it because it's like anytime like a tragedy happens, a writer's like, this is going to be a scene one day. How can I turn this into a thing? And it's like it. I mean, it is helpful in that it helps you like gain a different perspective to like see it from a little bit above where you're at. But just this idea of like, no matter what I go through, I can choose I can choose to pull a story out of this, a lesson, a piece of wisdom that can then go on and inspire other people, right? And just the idea of like, you can't change what happens, but you can change how you respond to that. But you can also change the story you tell yourself about what happened. Not in a delusional way and like pretending shit didn't happen, but saying, I am going to choose how I relate to this experience. And that for me has been transformative. So it's like, when it's like, hey, 1 month I've made a shit ton of money and then, something happened and like something broke and then 2 months went by and I made no money. Or like, hey, bills are due. Or hey, there have been times where it's like, you know, credit cards maxed. How do you and then the next payment is due. How are you going to do that? I'm like, Alex Hormozi in $100 million offers or whatever. Like he opens with the whole idea of like he had X amount of money in his account, but all that had to go to payroll, right? And I sat there like when that happened to me, and I was like, this is going to make a fucking awesome opener one day, or this is going to make an incredible screenshot one. Like, and it's just like just that idea of no matter what you go through, that can inspire somebody else someday. And that, I think, that is a huge way to get through things sometimes, to choose how you deal with that experience. But I also really like your take on it of, if you're at a fork in the road, which would make for a better story.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes from, I guess we'll just start quoting Hormozi everything, but one of my favorite quotes is, "The bigger the dragon, the more epic the story, and by consequence, the greater the hero." And so, like, no one tells the story of the hero where everything worked out the first time. And so, by it being difficult, it's a blessing, you know? It's that idea of, like, again, Hormozi says, if you had to create a human, what would you put through them to make them tough? Probably wouldn't be a really chill life. If you wanted to make them patient, you would throw them a bunch of obstacles and make them earn that patience. If you wanted to make them a wise person, you would have them go through a lot of failures and mistakes so that they have to earn that wisdom. And so it's like, do we want these things, these character traits, these outcomes, but by consequence, there's also a price. We can't want the prize and not be willing to pay the price.
One version I had heard is like, don't ask for a lighter load, ask for broader shoulders. And I like, and like, that's it for me, right? Is like, it's not about trying to have an easy life. It's about having a life worth living. And that naturally includes sacrifice. That naturally includes adversity. That naturally includes hardship, all these other things. Because it's like, one, if you look at any story ever that inspires you, it was because some fucked up shit happened, but that person was able to come out the other side. No story ever was like, hey, everything was fucking great, the end. Nobody would care. Nobody cares, right? And I think that that can be disheartening for people, especially earlier on in their journey, when all you see is everybody sharing their wins and everybody sharing. And again, like, I came online with like all the creator shit in like 2020. So back when, money Twitter and like all the screenshots of the Stripe notifications and like all that shit. And it's like, when all you see is everybody else is winning, all their wins and all their external celebrations, but all you know of yourself is your internal struggles, you constantly feel inadequate, inferior, not enough. And the thing I tell people all the time is like, nobody shares their struggles online, not when they're happening. They either share performative struggles, right? So like, a while ago, the was it like a CEO on LinkedIn got fucking railed because he was
Yeah.
like, he posted a picture of him crying, like, oh, I just fired somebody. It's like, buddy, you're not the victim here. Nobody has sympathy for you. Right? It's performative, right? Or or people share retroactive struggles of 5 years ago, I was living out of my car, but look at me now. And it's like, nobody shares a struggle when they're having it typically, because that doesn't inspire anybody. People don't want to read a trauma dump, and the individual doesn't want to be vulnerable like that online. That is why it's critical for you to have real friends to talk to about the real struggles you're going through while you're going through them. Like, one of my friends, Mel, Mel's a fellow psychologist, Mel Varghese. He's a fellow psychologist and creator, entrepreneur, all this shit. And Mel and I have like a standing call every month. And it's like a call because Mel's a fucking boomer. He's not a boomer, but like, it's a literal, and like, dude, like, my skin crawls with like literal phone calls because like, I can't do anything, but I love Mel. So we do them. And it's like, we have very candid conversations like, this worked, this didn't launch, this launch was awful, or like, hey, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll or whatever, right? Or like, this really great thing happened. But just to have a small circle of people to actually have those conversations with, I think is critical, because if you don't ever see other people's struggles, real struggles, you can feel alone in this, because all you ever see are everybody else's wins. you never see their internal state, you never see their real struggles.
100%. And I've definitely been there. I've been on the other side, starting on money Twitter and seeing all these people making magical internet money. How the heck are they doing that? Is this real? Like, how do I do that? And then now being on the other side of that, it's realizing that even the people who we thought were like super successful and winning every time and just win after win after win, we put them on pedestals. They're all just human, and for most of the majority of their days, it's actually not as glamorous, and it's actually hard. Um, to your point, I have several internet friends that now have turned into real person friends, and we do have a monthly call, not a monthly, a quarterly call, and just having those people who are there for you, who you can share your wins and also share your losses, who can hold you accountable to the commitments you said you'd make. I think that's invaluable. And I know Mr. Beast had that with his, when he was just starting out, he put together a group of YouTubers who had 10,000 subscribers, and then they all reached over 1 million subscribers. Just having those buddies, there's I call it the golden circle of relationships. You want to have a mentor, you want to have your peers, and then you want to have someone 1 or 2 steps behind you that you can teach and bring along.
Agreed. And I think that, one of the guys, so two guys really early on for me, again, when I started my own business, who really helped me were Dan Coe and Nick Wignall, who's another fellow psychologist. I kind of I knew of Nick because he was big on Medium. He had like a couple 100,000 on Medium. This is back when Medium was a big thing, but he had like a couple thousand Twitter followers. So I was like, oh, he's going to be way easier to hit up on Twitter. And then, we kind of became friends. And Dan was a similar thing. Dan was actually the very first person I coached because I hit him up and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm starting my own coaching business. This is who I am and what I do. I've been writing for a while. Would love to just offer you just like a straight up free session. And if you like it, give me a shout out, whatever." And like, so we did it. Then later, Dan started Modern Mastery and all the shit he's done since. Dan's incredible too. And like, Dan was like, "Hey, man, I've got this copywriting course. Here you go. Hey, I've got this. Hey, I've got that. Hey, come in and do this, for this community." And I think that people like that. And you are a similar kind of person of you're always so generous. You're always giving, you're always connecting, you're always in a good way saying yes to things, right? Not that you spread yourself too thin or say yes to things that aren't aligned, but you're so gracious. And I think that, especially coupled with like your discipline and shit, for sure. But I think just the sheer level of generosity and authenticity that you just have, whether it is cultivated or natural, it is now. I think that is a huge thing that is really important early on, but is even more important later on in your career and as you grow in things. How do you think, and you touch on like being like a super connector in your book. How do you think about being a super connector and cultivating relationships like that and mentoring other people as well?
First off, I appreciate those kind words. I think it goes back to like if I know what my North Star is, what are the actions I can take today that will make that future outcome have a higher probability of becoming true? Um, and so I remember, when I was 16 and Dan Coe gave me free access to Modern Mastery, and that gave me so much. That just opened my eyes to like the possibilities on the internet. And now I'm in a similar position of Dan. Like I can help people who are just starting out, and I think it's fulfilling for that. And I also think there's this idea that I think Tim Ferriss calls it pre VIPs. Noah Kagan calls them pre-fluencers, whatever you want to call them. It's like you can spot people who have ambition, who have discipline, who have drive, and a ton of energy. They just don't know where to point that. And so if you can help steer that drive to a productive vehicle, and then they do end up becoming successful or whatever, um, not only is that fulfilling, but it could also benefit you down the road. And so I see it more as like planting seeds. Every generous act I do is like, can I plant seeds with the people that I want to be around in the future? And maybe it'll help me out in the future. Maybe it won't. And that's okay. I think it's still like the right thing to do. Maybe that's just how I was raised with Asian parents, but I'm always trying to give more than I receive. Can I leave every environment better than I found it? And that includes people as well.
And like, so a key piece to this though is it's non-transactional, right? I think a lot of people, when they think about like networking or building relationships, they come at it from a transactional mindset right out the gate of like, how can we benefit each other? Implied, how can you benefit me more than I benefit you? And I think that, people like you, like Dan, like honestly, at this point, a lot of people I know, it never feels transactional. It is always value forward. It is always genuine and authentic. And I think that that is the piece so many people miss when it comes to, quote unquote networking, when it comes to like building your social network. I think that piece is what fucks most people up. Is it they approach it as a transactional relationship rather than a genuine relationship. Because like with us, man, like you said, like we had coffee when you were down here in Austin. We had talked online for a minute. You had inspired me early on because I'm like, this motherfucker hasn't even graduated high school yet. He's doing so much super cool shit. And you were again just right out the gate, like so fucking genuine and shit. I'm like, I have to meet this dude. So we did, and we've continued to talk since then. And honestly, dude, like not a week goes by, I would say, that I don't bring your name up at least once in a conversation I have, either one on one with somebody, or if I'm doing a workshop, or if I'm doing something else. Like so often your name comes up. And like most of the time, like literally the way I phrase it is, I want to be like Jay when I grow up, even though he's like half my age. Like, because and you've never asked me for anything transactional. Like I'm always down to help you and you're always down to help me. And like I've definitely, I've of my own volition, like given you shout outs in articles and newsletter issues and other things. And I will like 100% like, rep this book all day, every day. I'll share it everywhere. You never asked me to do it. And even if you would have, I'd be like, fucking, of course I will. Like that's not transactional. That's a friend asking another friend, like, hey, are you down to support this? Of course I will. But like, I've had other people who have approached me and it's like, hey, this is transactional. Like, hey, I would, I'm not going to name names, but I reached out to somebody else and I was like, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. Here's what it is. Here's what we'll do. And they were like, I need you to buy at least 4 books before I appear on your podcast. And I'm like, 4 is an arbitrary number. No, that's just fucking weird. It was immediately transactional. And I was like, I don't like that. But it's like, you never asked me to buy a book. I'm like, motherfucker, I can't not buy this book. Right. And it's like, it's that kind of thing. It's like, are you building genuine relationships with people or are they transactional? How do you think about that?
I think it's as simple as, do you want friends or do you want a network? Like, I don't want a network. I just want friends. So, like, why would I not treat people like my friend? I think it's as simple as
How do
that.
you, how do you see that play out at higher levels of entrepreneurship? Because people like Noah, like Alex, like tons of other people. Does that stay true at higher levels or no?
So,
Because
I
some
think
people
it's
would say
slightly
that
different.
that's okay.
It would be slightly different only because when you're at that level, you have just so much demand for your time. Everyone wants a minute of your time. And so you do have to sometimes do the like, hey, I'm going to, like, if you want me to speak at your event, buy 100 copies of my book. Like, you have to do a little bit of that to show that, like, hey, are you actually serious? Or do you, like, is this just like a ask? Or are you actually serious? Do you actually want me? So there are some tests that you have to do when you're at that level. But no, 100%. The higher up you go, the more you realize people aren't competing at the top, they're collaborating.
Agreed. And the speaker thing, that's a really good point because because again, like when I had that interaction, I was like, a speaking engagement makes sense because you would typically be paid anyway. What most authors do is, in lieu of paying me directly my speaker fee, just buy effectively the equivalent in book copies, right?
Right.
That's the expectation. But I agree with you, man. Like people at the top, the way they succeed is through collaborating. It isn't through actual competition. And I think that that's the thing a lot of people really mess up mentally is they see everybody as their competition. They see everything as competition. So then they isolate. And it's like, you've made no friends. You've built no relationships. You have no collaborators because you're so afraid everybody, you have the scarcity mindset. And when I stopped having that, when I started seeing everybody as a potential friend or an actual friend, when somebody else shared a win, I stopped thinking, oh, that somehow negatively affects me. I'm like, cool, a friend won. One, I'm super happy for them. But two, this proves it's possible to win in that way. So then you're inspired by everybody around you rather than seeing everybody as a potential competitor or enemy of some sort.
Yeah, it's that idea of like positive sum versus zero sum. Just because someone else is winning doesn't take away from your journey. I think too many people try and think like, oh, if someone else is winning, it cuts into my pie. Like, no, let's just grow the pie. Let's all win. You know that thing in 2020 that we're all gonna make it. Let's all do it together. Um,
Another thing that you had brought up, because you when the book came out, you announced it in your newsletter and things, and you said, honestly, I wasn't sure I'd ever finish it. I told myself it was too early, too much going on. Who am I to write a book? Imposter syndrome fundamentally is the belief that you don't belong in the room, whatever that room is. How have you navigated imposter syndrome?
the soundbite that I like to go on to give on podcasts is like, I'm not the guru, I'm the guide. I'm not the preacher lecturing to the class. I'm the kid in the back of the class sharing his notes with everyone else. Um, but truthfully, I've definitely suffered with imposter syndrome, and I think I still do. Um, it may be my age, it may be that I'm grew up from an Asian background, but I always constantly feel like I have to prove myself. That why would anyone listen to me? I still have so much to do, and I think it's that I saw a reel on Instagram the other day. It was like, this 10 out of 10. You see this 10 out of 10 girl, but you don't reach out to her because you're not who you want to be yet. And I think that same idea plays to my career as well. As like, everyone sees the success, but I am not yet where I want to be. And so that feeling of like, I know where I want to go, but I'm not there yet. That discrepancy, I think, uh, causes a lot of that imposter syndrome. Like, why would you listen to me? Because I'm not where I want to be yet. And so, um, without realizing that what is obvious to you is amazing to others. And I think that frame has helped me the most as well.
Ali Abdal, he's put out videos before about imposter syndrome, and I've talked with Ali because like I ended up working with Ali. I ended up coaching him for like 6 months because of a permissionless approach. Like literally, like one day he put out this YouTube video about here are like the 8 struggles I'm having in life and business, and this is like when I was early in entrepreneurship, and I was like, these are the exact things that I help people with. So I dropped, it was like his video was like 40 minutes. I dropped everything I had that day and just wrote a full article of like, if you were my client, here's how I would help you with each of these things. And it's like a 20-minute read, like a super raw article. I didn't fucking edit it, any of that. It was just boom, done. And I shared it online, gave everything away, gave the recipe away. Um, and I was like, hey, everybody, I had like 500 Twitter followers or some shit, maybe. I was like, hey, everybody, I don't know Ali. So if you all could like share this, maybe he would eventually see it. He saw it, loved it. We worked together for a while. And we've been friends ever since. Ali, like I said, he's talked about imposter syndrome and we've talked about it. And I was like, dude, how do you have imposter syndrome? You are the reason other people have imposter syndrome. Like, how does that work? And he was like, look, most of the people I know have a level of imposter syndrome, no matter how successful they become. And for me, I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. Um, so very quick story. When I was in grad school, we had this like homeless outreach event that like, schools of psychology, nursing, medicine, we all like came together to like provide services for people experiencing homelessness in December, super cold. And so they could come in, get like medical checkup, prescriptions, clothing, whatever. And I'm like, I'm supposed to sit here and like teach these people how to do like deep breathing or like do some smoking cessation shit. Like, if you need a cigarette, have a fucking cigarette. Like, you're fighting for your life under a bridge in sub freezing temperatures. You do not need diaphragmatic or progressive muscle relaxation shit.
Yeah.
And I went up to two of my supervisors who between them had like 50 years of experience. And I was like, hey, when is this feeling like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing go away? And they're like, we'll let you know. Meaning, even they, at the top of their field, still felt like they didn't fully know what they were doing. Okay. From that day, I've never had imposter syndrome. Not that I don't experience insecurity or that like heart palpitation shit of like entering a new room, but I
Hmm.
never think of it as imposter syndrome. At this point, I really look at it almost as the term I've been playing with is liminal tension. So anytime you enter a liminal space, when you are going from one space to another, there is a tension there because this is a new thing. You are doing new things. You are pushing
Mm.
your growth edges. So for me, it's not that I don't belong in that room. It's this is a new room. So this tension is a natural part of this evolution of me crossing this threshold and going into this new space. This is supposed to be here. I'm supposed to experience this because experiencing this means I am growing and pushing myself. That's the thing. And I think that most people feel that and they see it as a sign to back off. But it's like this is actually a sign to move forward because it proves you're pushing yourself.
Mm. I love that. You're not bad, you're just new. It's like that growing pains.
And that's a natural process. Because it's like, before you wrote this book, imposter syndrome could kick in because it's like, I've never written a book. Who am I to write this book? Now you've written a book. Now you're an author. It's no longer like writing your first book is no longer new territory. Now, maybe promoting a book is. Now, maybe writing the second book is, right? But before this came out, it was new territory. You were growing in order to create it. You had to grow in order to create it. But creating it itself forced you to grow.
The work works on you more than you work on it. That's a mantra I have in my head. Every time I feel like it's hard, like writing a book is, it's not easy. It's like, yeah, I rewrote it 17 different times. There's tons of time I was struggling for the right word, or I had to revisit this story. Reading 1,000-page biography is not inherently exciting, but I realized like writing this book, it's actually working on me more than I'm working on the book. I have now become someone who I can say I'm an author. I've become someone who has this experience now, this earned experience that I can talk about, and I think it's shaped a lot of how I think and who I am now. I mean, just me 8 months ago is completely different than me today.
Exactly. And then I have a couple more questions because I know we got to wrap up. Um, I've talked before about like the four horsemen of fear, right? The most common limiting beliefs that tend to hold people back: failure, ridicule, uncertainty, and success. And you yourself have said that you've kind of benefited from that framework, specifically around fear of success. I still have a because it's one of like my testimonials on some of my shit. You said the four horsemen of fear framework, specifically fear of success, completely transformed the way you operate in your life and your business. How has fear of success, like how have you navigated fear of success to this point?
So to me, this idea of fear of success comes from, the higher you go, the higher the fall. And so it's that fear that everything can be kind of taken away from me. And even if I do get to that pinnacle of where I actually wanted to go, maybe I don't feel like I'm enough still, and maybe it's like I'm afraid of realizing maybe that actually wasn't what I wanted. Um, the way I've navigated it is similar to the way I've navigated college, which is I'd rather try than not try. I'd rather go after success and maybe not achieve it, or maybe do achieve it and realize that's not what I wanted. I'd rather experience it and know that it isn't what I want or it is what I want than not ever really trying. And so when I go back and forth between like, is this really what I want to do? It's like I'd rather try than not try.
One thing that I've kind of talked with people about is around this exact fear of like, what if everything goes to zero? One, is it possible? Yes. But how probable is it? Right? You can logic your way through it a bit. But the other thing is like, you actually can't start at zero anymore. Meaning you could lose all your money, you could lose your LLC or some shit, but you can't lose your skills or your friends, your network, right? And your reputation, hypothetically. Unless you do like some super fucked up shit, you lose your reputation. Okay. But in general, you could start at zero financially tomorrow and probably be fine the day after tomorrow because of all the skills you've accumulated, because of all the people you've cultivated relationships with, and because of the reputation you've built. Right? People get so caught up around like personal branding and building a personal brand. If you just substitute the term personal brand for reputation, that'll clarify so much. Like, what reputation am I trying to build? Does this align with my reputation? Does this hurt or harm my reputation? Like the person I am trying to be, that I'm trying to let people know that I am, how does this serve that mission? Right. So I think even for you, if everything went to zero, like actually, like what would happen, right? Like what would you actually do if everything went to zero today? What would tomorrow look like?
Yeah, it's that idea of if everything got taken away from me. It's like when you see those like super rich people, those multimillionaires lose everything or they go bankrupt and then they're rich again like in a week. It's because they've become someone. It's I think Dickie Bush wrote about this. You don't want financial security, you want financial confidence. Realizing that if everything was taken away from you, you can just build it right back up again. Um, and so yeah, I think that frame of mind has definitely helped me. It's like even if all my followers or all my everything goes to zero and I'm back in my parents' basement, I still am the person capable of doing those things. I still know how to build a following. I still know how to ghostwrite for founders. I still know how to write a book. I still know how to use the permissionless approach to reach out to people and create opportunities for myself. And so that I think has been the greatest shield for that fear of success or fear of everything being taken away from me.
On Instagram a bit ago, you did like an AMA, and somebody asked you what makes you keep going, and you said superiority complex plus crippling anxiety plus love of the game. How does this equation work for you?
So that equation has been something that's been in my mind for a long time. And it's the superiority complex. That aspect comes from this idea that I believe I'm better than most people. And so that gives me the courage to like write online or to shoot my shot or to write a book. It's because I truly believe that I have built skills sets, character traits, and beliefs that other people can be impacted and inspired from. The crippling insecurity part is that idea of like what we just talked about, seeing other people winning more and being feeling like I'm not enough yet. The story I like to say is I played basketball growing up. I started in fourth grade. A lot of my peers started in first and second grade. And so right off the bat, I was behind and I was terrible. And I hated that feeling. I absolutely hated feeling like I was worse than other people. And so I would wrap a basketball in a plastic grocery bag to make it more slippery. And I would dribble in the basement for hours, hours at a time. I put up a YouTube video of like a 6 minute ball handling routine, and I play that on loop, and I do it over and over and over again. Um, and I don't think that's a testament of discipline or hard work. I think that's a testament of like I just hated feeling inadequate, and I think that's driven a lot of what I do today. Is like I don't feel like I'm enough, and I want to feel that, and that's probably not super healthy long term, but that's one of the things that drives me. And then the third part, love the game, is what we talked about at the beginning. Find the torture that you're worth suffering for. Writing, reading, researching, building things online isn't always fun. It isn't always like the 30-second highlight reel that people see online, but I wouldn't want to have it any other way. I I don't think I would be able to have the consistency that I've had for the last 4 years of my life, waking up early, staying up late, working every little hour I can get, if I didn't actually like or love the things that I was doing, if I wasn't absolutely obsessed with it, if it wasn't the thing that I couldn't not do.
Last question. What is a Jay Yang original quote or question you want to leave people with?
I mean, it would be the title of my book. You can just do things. What would it look like if you tried the handle? The analogy I like to use is so many people walk past the door assuming that it's locked, so they never try the handle. And what separates the people often from the people who get what they want and the people who don't isn't superior talent or skill, it's courage. It's the courage to try the handle. And what you'll find is oftentimes the door is unlocked.
Love that. Where can people find you?
Find me at JYangInspires on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then if you want to stay up to date with my most recent thoughts and work, it's jyanginspires.beehive.com or the Spark.
Yeah, I'll put all the links in show notes and shit. But yeah, that way people listening or watching can also get it. Highly recommend, can't recommend enough. The book, You Can Just Do Things by Jay Yang. Dude, I'm so fucking thankful you came on. I'd love to have you on again in the future after you've done even more awesome shit or just to hang out. Um, Thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate your time. And I know people are going to love this episode. Also, one more thing before you go. If you enjoyed this episode, there are two things you can do to share the wealth. One, send this episode to someone who needs to hear this message and tell them why it was so impactful for you. Two, take like literally 3 seconds to either like or leave a hopefully 5-star review, but be honest because there's a lot of fluff and bullshit out there and people are looking for content that's actually valuable. So a little social proof from people like you giving the show a good review goes a long way. Thanks for listening/watching. And until next time, take it easy.